Tonight, a fourth shooting, this time at a pub in Fort St. John. Possible measles exposure happened at the hospital emergency room. And turning 100, a Dawson Creek resident shares her secret to a happy life. Well, good evening and happy Halloween. We begin tonight with yet another shooting in Fort St. John, this one happening at the New Frontier Pub and Grill early this morning. Witnesses say they heard shots fired and called police. Mounties arrived at the pub located on 100th Avenue not long after the incident. No one was injured in what investigators are calling an isolated incident, but police do say a fire was deliberately set outside the building as well. It's the fourth shooting in Fort St. John in the last 7 days. And police believe the recent string of shootings are connected to an ongoing drug war in the Peace region. But Fort St. John Mayor Lilia Hansen said in a statement, quote, "Violence of any kind has no place in our community, and I am confident that the RCMP will find those responsible," unquote. She adds, "I urge anyone with any information about these incidents to come forward to the RCMP. This comes after residents are wondering on social media how safe it is to trick or treat after the recent shootings." Another possible measles exposure to tell you about tonight, this one in Fort St. John. The BC CDC says you may have been exposed to the virus if you were at the emergency room or waiting room at the Fort St. John Hospital. The possible exposure occurring on October the 26th, just after 8 p.m. until 1:10 a.m. the next morning. Health officials say those who may have been exposed should use the measles exposure risk assessment tool to determine to do what's next. The tool is available on the BC CDC's website. The centre also confirming 12 new measles cases across Northeast BC in their Thursday update. That increases the total here in the Northeast British Columbia area to 225 cases so far this year. With it being Halloween, little ghosts and goblins are out trick-or-treating, and with all that excitement, it's one of the most dangerous nights of the year for pedestrians, so police are urging everyone to take care. Mounties say Halloween is one of the busiest nights of the year for pedestrians, and they're asking everyone, especially drivers, to slow down and expect the unexpected. Dawson Creek RCMP say excited young kids don't know the rules of the road, and there's always the possibility of them darting out into traffic. ICBC says roughly 800 crashes happen every Halloween in British Columbia, injuring more than 200 people, and police are reminding families to plan their routes, stick to well-lit areas, and add reflective tape to darker costumes so kids can be seen. An animal rescue agency in Valley View, Alberta, west of Grand Prairie, has surrendered hundreds of cats and dogs to the RCMP. And police say they need help from more than a dozen animal welfare agencies just to cope.
Making sure that there was vets to check all these animals before they went to the other shelters, and then these animals had other locations to go to that were safe and where they could recover as well.
The Alberta Animal Rescue Crew Society coordinated the recovery efforts along with its national counterpart. Now, police are not naming the shelter because charges have yet to be laid, but a spokesperson says it's mostly dogs and cats. The shelter in question also surrendered a rabbit, horses, and cattle. Several animals had to be euthanized because of the distress that they were in when they were found.
It's really unfortunate to see a lot of people go into rescue with the best of intentions, and it's unfortunate to see when these are the situations that we come out with. It's tough.
If you're interested in adopting these animals, you can visit the Alberta Animal Rescue Crew Society website. Now, most will go to foster homes first to help address any behavioral or trust issues they may have. As for the horses and other livestock, they'll either be adopted or sent to a sanctuary. The Supreme Court of Canada is set to decide next week on whether to hear a last-ditch appeal against an ordered cull of ostriches at a southeast BC farm. Among the leave applications that will be ruled on next Thursday is Universal Ostrich Farm's challenge of the Canadian Food Inspection Agency's order to cull the flock after an avian flu outbreak was detected late last year. If the court decides not to hear the case and lifts the stay on the cull, there will be no legal impediment to the killing of hundreds of birds on the Edgewood farm. However, if leave to appeal is granted, then a final decision on the fate of the flock would then come after a hearing. Well, affordability is one of the big issues expected to be addressed by the Carney government in next week's budget. Tonight, we're speaking to Canadians facing rising costs on what would help them the most. Andrew Johnson has one BC's family's unique story.
Crack it open.
In the Higgins household, Mom and her helpers are making sourdough from scratch, trying to save.
The cost is, $4 or $5 a loaf. My kids go through so much bread. So much bread.
And the family of 5 is making tough choices at the grocery store.
Juice is becoming a luxury, something that I'm like, maybe we need to stick to milk and water for the kids.
Ahead of budget day, Caitlin Higgins' ask from Ottawa is a way to pay less.
Gas and groceries, those, they really drain our accounts.
The family is fortunate to own their own home in one of the most unaffordable regions of the country. In fact, 3 generations of the Higgins family live in multiple homes on what used to be one lot. Next door, Caitlin's brother-in-law Patrick is feeling the same pinch.
This morning I went out with my girlfriend. We went to a park and before we got a couple coffees and breakfast. It was like $30.
Patrick is pulling for the feds to forge a quick path toward economic peace with the U.S.
Find a way to smooth that out. And I'm not saying, appease everything that Trump has to say, which is not the answer.
Peekaboo. Peekaboo.
Patrick's parents tore down the rancher they raised 7 children in to build 4 smaller homes and help their kids. They want to see all levels of government help more people do the same.
The federal government could do a lot by giving tax breaks to people that redevelop their own property. We really want young people, not just our own kids, but other young people to have a chance to own a home on the ground where they can put down roots.
Thinking outside the box on housing, cheaper groceries and gas, and a smoother way forward with the U.S. The asks from the Higgins family in North Delta, BC. Go! Andrew Johnson, CTV News.
Canada's economy shrank by 0.3% in August, according to data from Statistics Canada. StatsCan says the Air Canada flight attendant work stoppage hurt activity in the economy in August. Declines were also seen in the country's manufacturing, trade, and mining sectors. Early signs do suggest the economy barely managed growth in the third quarter. Ontario's government is taking the next step toward the potential creation of a new energy corridor and pipeline from Western Canada.
It's a feasibility study. The conversation is just beginning, but we can't wait. We've got to move quickly on all opportunities to build this corridor for a made-in-Canada solution.
The study will explore the benefits of building oil and gas pipelines from Alberta and Saskatchewan to new and existing refineries in Ontario. The Ontario Premier's office says the proposal will unlock new markets for Canada's energy resources while reducing dependency on the United States. Opposition leaders say details are still scarce. Prime Minister Mark Carney says Canada's relationship with China is at a turning point. The comment comes following his meeting with Chinese President Xi Jinping. Carney met Xi on the sidelines of the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation Summit. Their talks concluded with an invitation for a state visit. CTV's Judy Trin reports.
The face-to-face hosted by China marked the first time in 8 years that a Canadian and Chinese leader met officially. Mark Carney expressed regret for lost time.
Distance is not the way to solve problems, not the way to serve our people with people-centric growth, as you have advocated. Pragmatic and constructive engagement is.
The meeting lasted 39 minutes. According to a readout from the Prime Minister's office, the leaders discussed trade issues, including agriculture, canola, seafood, and electric vehicles. There's no deal, but there's dialogue.
We now have a turning point in the relationship.
The freeze in relations began in 2018 after Canada arrested Huawei executive Meng Wanzhou at the request of the U.S. In response, China detained Michael Spavor and Michael Kovrig. Then in 2022, Xi scolded former Prime Minister Justin Trudeau in front of cameras. Analysts say recalibrating with China must be done carefully.
Mr. Carney will be able to have firm views on difficult issues related to human rights, religious freedom, and so on, while at the same time saying, let's discuss how we can work together.
We are going to have to play our own game with China based on our own interests and our own ambitions.
This was the second time Carney has met Xi. Previously, they met in 2016 when he was governor of the Bank of England. There will be a third meeting too. Xi Jinping has invited Carney to China for a state visit. Judy Trin, CTV News, Gyeongju, South Korea.
And now to the trade talks between Canada and the United States. They're still off, according to President Trump, after two leaders spoke briefly in Asia, which Trump called a nice conversation. CTV's Jeremy Sharon joins us now with the latest.
Back on U.S. soil after meeting with world leaders in Asia, U.S. President Donald Trump confirming talks with Canada aren't restarting.
What did you talk about with Prime Minister Carney? Are you and Canada going to resume negotiations?
No.
Trump and Prime Minister Mark Carney spoke during a working dinner earlier this week with other world leaders in South Korea, the first encounter between the two leaders since this Ontario government anti-tariff ad prompted Trump to halt negotiations.
I have a very good relationship. I like him a lot. But you know what they did was wrong. He was very nice. He apologized for what they did with the commercial.
On Thursday, the Prime Minister's office confirmed Trump and Carney spoke during the dinner, but didn't make mention of an apology. The Office of the Minister in charge of Canada-U.S. relations declined to comment today.
Our job is to respect their choice and deal with whoever is in the White House. And so it's up and down with Canada, but we'll just have to bear through it as we make our way in getting a trade agreement, a new trade agreement with our American neighbor.
Washington has accused Canada of being difficult to deal with in negotiations. Trump's National Economic Council director telling CNN Canada hasn't been playing fair.
So President Trump won't stand for it. He's tried to negotiate with the Canadians to get better deals for Americans, and they've been, frankly, rude and dismissive. And this is how it gets to where we are.
Carney's government has said it stands ready to resume negotiations whenever Washington is ready, and Canada's ambassador to the U.S. says lines of communication remain open. Jeremy Sharon, CTV News, Ottawa.
The Supreme Court of Canada has ruled against mandatory minimum jail sentences for people who access or possess child pornography. In its ruling, the court says the mandatory minimums for those crimes is unconstitutional. Now, according to the High Court, such a move would remove a judge's discretion to impose other sentences where appropriate. The decision backs a previous ruling in Quebec and stems from the case of two men who pleaded guilty to child pornography offenses. FBI Director Kash Patel says a potential terrorist attack plan for this Halloween weekend has been stopped before it could be carried out. Patel says multiple suspects who were allegedly plotting a violent attack were arrested in Dearborn, Michigan. Local police posted they were aware of an FBI operation and said there is no threat to the community. The death toll from Hurricane Melissa is now at 49 after tearing through the northern Caribbean. The storm is now turning north as Canadians on the East Coast will begin to feel the effects. At least 30 people have died in Haiti, another 19 in Jamaica, where Melissa made landfall Tuesday as a powerful Category 5 hurricane. Much of the island is still without power as aid is just starting to arrive. Now, Atlantic Canada is facing wet and windy conditions, with Melissa expected to turn into a post-tropical storm overnight. Well, most of the country will be setting their clocks back this weekend. Millions of Canadians will notice their clocks turn back by an hour in the early morning hours on Sunday, marking the end of daylight savings time for this year. Most provinces and territories observe the shift, which occurs yearly on the first Sunday of November. The exceptions are here in northeast British Columbia, Yukon, most of Saskatchewan and parts of Nunavut, and Quebec. For those who do, dawn will come earlier in the morning and darkness will loom sooner in the afternoon. The federal government introduced daylight savings times back in 1918. The goal at the time was to increase production during the First World War, shifting an hour of sunlight from before breakfast to after dinner. The practice of falling back and springing forward has been a hot debate for years, with many asking if we should abolish it altogether. A Dawson Creek resident reaching an incredible milestone, celebrating her 100th birthday this Saturday. Gloria Coons moved to the Peace Region from New Brunswick in 1945, and she says she couldn't have found a nicer place to live after having spent 80 years in the Peace Region.
I have lived a fairly good life and a quiet life, but yet an active life. But I can just bless the good Lord.
Gloria first settled on a farm in Rolla with her husband Arnold. Together, they raised 4 boys before moving to Dawson Creek. Well, Gloria says it was pretty shocking moving to such a small town with boards, sidewalks, mud roads, and maybe 6 or 8 streets at the time. However, she says she found residents here the most welcoming. Throughout the years, Gloria has got involved in many ways. She's a lifetime member of the Rolla Women's Institute and even worked at the Dawson Creek and District Hospital. Gloria says she found meaning by helping others through her work and by following her motto.
A smile goes a long ways and a lot farther than a frown. And if you pass someone going by, even though you don't know them, and you smile, say hello, you'd be surprised what it does to you and to them, because maybe they don't have anyone smile at them.
It's such great advice. Over the weekend, Gloria is celebrating her 100th birthday at the Rotary Manor, and she's expecting over 60 family members and friends. All right, congratulations, Gloria. Happy birthday. And for the rest of you, stay tuned. We'll be right back with weather.